This week, battles are fought, men die, and cities are taken. On the 6th, Brigadier General Ulysses Grant takes Paducah, Kentucky without a fight. This is, of course, in response to last week's Confederate invasion of Kentucky. Though, due to this being a response to the Confederate invasion of Kentucky, Grant makes sure to not be viewed as an invader, saying to the people of Paducah, "I have come among you, not as your enemy, but as your friend." And it appears that most Kentuckians agree with Grant, because while Governor McGuffin calls for both the Union and Confederacy to leave Kentucky, the next day, the Kentucky state legislature has a resolution calling for only the Confederates to leave. The governor, of course, vetoes this, but surprisingly, the veto is overturned. A Union flag is hoisted above the Kentucky state capitol, and Kentucky officially declares itself for the Union. Quite interesting. On the 8th, the Battle of Placeto. If you remember last week, there was a sole Confederate cavalryman survivor from an engagement with the Apache. Well, he makes it back to his camp, and they are very angry about the loss of their 3 fellow comrades. So they go out seeking revenge, looking especially at Placeto, which had just sent a word of help for them. There used to be Mexican settlers occupying it, but they were kicked out by the Apache. So, 15 Confederate militiamen go with the Mexican settlers and engage the Apache at long range, for pretty much the entire day, in fact. The casualties are low, and at night, only losing 5 dead, the Apache still find it not worth it and retreat from Placeto. Moving away from the battlefield and to hospitals, which is the natural course of many soldiers, we learn that Nurse Sally Tompkins is made an officer in the Confederate Army. This is because, according to a declaration by President Jefferson Davis of the Confederacy, all military hospitals must be run by an Army officer. Now, this is interesting, because not only does this make her the first female Confederate officer, it also makes her the first female officer of this war, and possibly the first female military officer in the history of the United States of America. On the 10th, Colonel William Bull Nelson is moved to East Kentucky and is replaced at Camp Dick Robinson by Brigadier General Henry Thomas. Don't worry for either's careers, of course. Nelson has proved himself a good recruiter and trainer during his time at the camp, and Mr. Thomas has been given a lot of trust in his duties, as shown by his quick promotions throughout the early stages of what is probably going to be a very long war. The same day, full General Albert Sidney Johnston is given control of Confederate War Department No. 2, which covers pretty much this area, just around here. Now, just a quick reminder, only recently has he been promoted to full general, but due to seniority, he is considered the No. 2 of the Confederacy, only behind full General Samuel Cooper. Albert Sidney Johnston immediately gets set to his new department. And for the westing on the 10th, a battle at Carnifex Ferry, where 5,000 Union soldiers under Union Brigadier General William S. Rosecrans takes on 2,000 Confederates under Brigadier General John B. Floyd. After the Confederate victory at Kessler Cross Lanes, the Confederates set right up on top of the previous Union camp, fortifying that area. This worries Rosecrans, who believes that from this area they could possibly threaten all of western Virginia. So he attacks, trusting in his numerical superiority. His men dutifully march forward, concentrate fire, and then trust in the bayonet. The Confederates then pour fire into the advancing Union ranks, forcing them back. Though Rosecrans has another plan: bomb the hell out of them. He starts using his cannons to blast away at the earthworks the Confederates set up, and this definitely forces a retreat. The Union lost 17 men to take back their camp, and 141 wounded. The Confederates lost an unknown amount of men dead and around 30 wounded. On the 11th, a very sad day for America, because President Lincoln rescinds the Emancipation Clause of Fremont's order. He tells Fremont's wife, who was there to plead for Fremont's cause, that he didn't want to highlight the issue of slavery, hoping that the Confederate States might come back, or at the very least, some more neutral people would continue sitting on their fence post. It's not particularly a good week for Fremont, because he's also under investigation for corruption, primarily because of his imprisonment of people who he deems as political rivals, especially fellow Unionist Frank Blair, who specifically challenges some of his authority. Oh, and to look at this. The very same day, President Lincoln tells Secretary of War Simon Cameron to arrest Maryland legislators with pro-Confederate views. He can do this because he has suspended habeas corpus in Maryland since April 27th, though judges ruled this was unconstitutional. This is during wartime, so he doesn't really care what judges think. The arrests happen and take around a third of the Maryland legislatures. Now, you would assume that this would cause uproar among Marylanders, but it doesn't. They hate the Confederacy, especially after Bull Run. Lincoln's gambit has paid off. He secured Maryland by force without angering Marylanders. Shifting back to the battlefield, on the 12th, a battle at Cheat Mountain, around here. Now, this is a battle between 3,000 Union soldiers under Brigadier General Joseph Reynolds versus full General of the Confederacy, Robert.E.Lee, and his 5,000 men. This 5,000 men are split up between 3 brigades. He wants these brigades to act individually at 3 specific points and overrun the Union soldiers. But there's a problem. Doing so will make communication between the 3 brigades very difficult, if not impossible. One of the brigades is sent to Cheat Summit Fort, and when they arrive there, they find themselves immediately devastated by musket volleys and heavily concentrated fire, tearing into their ranks and causing casualties that could definitely only be caused by a titanic force. They believe they've met 3,000 Union soldiers, if not more, when in truth, it's only 300 highly trained soldiers. And it seems the battle will probably continue into next week. Also on the 12th, the Battle of Lexington, where 77 Akron men will face off against British Grenadiers and Lightfoot. What? Wrong war again. What is this, you, John? I swear to God, one day I'm going to get you. Okay, the Battle of Lexington, Missouri, which happened around here. This will be between Major General Sterling Price with 15,000 members of the Missouri Guard against 3,500 men of the 23rd Illinois, led by Colonel James Mulligan. Price's forces first begin to reach Lexington, Missouri on the 11th, and on the 12th is when the fighting actually begins. 2 Union companies of infantry are sent forward as a delaying force. They are behind him as a way to defend themselves against the onslaught of musket fire. They first open fire and takes by surprise Confederate cavalry. The Confederate cavalry quickly reacts, retreating, hoping to meet up with a larger group of Confederate infantry to do a proper assault. And they meet up, regroup, reorganize, and have a new plan that will advance along a different route. But Colonel Mulligan learns of this and sends 6 companies of infantry this time to delay them, hoping to buy time to finish up his defenses of Lexington, mostly centered around the Masonic College there. They fight for a very long time, drawing out the slaughter, before finally the Union is forced back. They can go back to their defenses and are primarily forced back by Confederate artillery. Sickles during this time has to deal with Old Joe Hooker, and sadly his charm and intelligence and all-around amazingness isn't enough to win him over. Plus Sickles is scared. He has yet to receive his commission for Brigadier General, which jeopardizes his entire legitimacy. God, what even goes on at the Capitol? Now, I don't want to depress you with this news, but it is really important to remember that Sickles has challenges along with his victories, just like you and I. I'm going to end this week differently from the last months I've been doing the show, and talk to you personally about my view on a single event of this week, the rescinding of the Fremont Emancipation Order. This is not a good thing. And while I can see Lincoln's point of view, he is incredibly scared about losing any further support for this war, especially after the disasters at Bull Run and Wilson's Creek. I simply can't agree. There are currently 4 slave states within the Union: Delaware, Kentucky, Maryland, Missouri. Let's go over each of them one by one. Delaware, probably the most often forgot about all of these, well, at least up till now. I foresee Delaware being a very important player in this war. It is a slave state. It previously did have a vote on ordinance of succession, but that did not pass at all. Plus, 91% of the African Americans within the state are free. So I don't think Lincoln really worries about them leaving. Okay, what about Maryland? Well, as I covered this very week, Lincoln ordered for the rest of Maryland legislatures and has received very little pushback on it. So I'm pretty sure that's a safe state, at least now in his opinion. So that leaves 2, Kentucky and Missouri. Kentucky was actually the first one to bring the possible problems of the emancipation to Lincoln. And that telegraph definitely did reflect the time. But much has changed since that telegraph. The Confederates' invasion, Grant being allowed into Paducah just by the people, the American flag flying over the Capitol. It is definitely not the same state as it was when it sent that telegraph. I mean, there might be a few individuals who would be swayed by the emancipation part of Fremont's declaration, but not many. So that leaves Missouri, the state it actually affects. And, well, the governor of Missouri is currently working for the Confederacy along with the state guard. So he's not probably worried about ruffling that many officials. And what about the people? Well, Missouri is primarily divided between 2 groups. Recent immigrants from Europe, who are primarily situated in major cities, and the old rural people, who are more likely to own slaves and sympathize with the Confederacy already. Now, there are officials like postmen and very poor farmers, and some immigrants who took up farming in the countryside, especially among the Little Rhine. But that's not that many. I personally don't worry about them from the safety of my own newsroom. I don't think it's worth it. And I disagree. I think Lincoln is being overly paranoid here. But sadly, the president doesn't ask for my opinion. This entire dang war will continue. The unending terror of war. Parallel right to the unending terror of slavery. Hello! It's literally the entire Civil War week by week team here. This time in a spiffy costume. Now, if you liked the video, please click like. If you want to see more, you should be seeing around now a recommended video for those of you with low commitment. For those of you with slightly higher commitment, there should also be a playlist of the entire war up till now, plus this week's episode. And if you want to see more, or the entire Civil War depresses you, and you're very worried, so you don't want any information about the possible Confederate invasion, which is coming right towards you, Maine, then don't subscribe. But for those of you who are willing to defend Maine, which is in imminent danger, please subscribe. For those of you who disliked the video, you're probably a traitor. Lincoln!